This is kind of a cool camera. All right, guys, we're in Springfield, Massachusetts at Springfield Indian dealership. These guys are cool. This is Dennis.
Hey, how you guys doing?
And AA.
Hello.
Swadika.
Swadika.
So this bike here and AA, they did the Cannonball Run 2021. If you don't know what that is, well, there's a lot of information on the internet. You can look it up. But what it is from Sault Ste. Marie, which is just across the pond from where we live, and it goes down to South Padre Island. There's a little bit of a map here. You can see they run all the way over to Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, we started up there at Sault Ste. Marie, over to Myrtle Beach, and finally down to South Padre Island, Texas. That was a very technical route, a lot of mountains, a lot of traffic. Heck of a run.
3,700 miles.
Yeah.
So what can you tell me about the bike?
It's a 1928 Indian 101 Scout. It's a 750cc engine. It was originally a 600cc. I brought it up to 750 for her run. Bike ran fantastic. Had one little problem. She bounced off a guardrail on a Blue Ridge Parkway with it, but she picked up the bike and completed that day and didn't lose a point. Right, Ed?
Made the perfect score.
Yeah.
That's the whole guardrail that I slide. Come out from the dark tunnel and then slide the whole thing to the end.
At least you made it.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
she didn't
did.
break it. Yeah.
So he said that, so this is an oil, this is where you put oil into the bike, and this is gas. And there's a divider in here to separate the two tanks. But after she hit the guardrail, it split that a little bit, so they had to put a new tank on it to finish the run.
That's correct.
That's why that picture's got the gray tank. But
See with Mike Wolf from American Pickers right there. She was
Oh, yeah.
Iowa. Yeah.
yeah. So this is a great place. He's big into the history of Indian, and it's a really neat place to...
My grandfather worked for the original factory.
Okay.
Started working there about 1920
Wow.
and worked there until 1959 when they were still doing English bikes. So I was brought up with an Indian motorcycle in the barn.
Yep.
That's really cool.
Yeah, really good stuff.
That's really
Vice
cool.
left foot clutch. Did you want to show them?
Yeah, the one thing about these bikes is foot clutch, left-hand throttle, hand shift, totally different than anything you've ever ridden. But it's really got a great feel. Once you get used to it, it's really balanced out well. It's kind of almost like a car. You got left-hand throttle, right-hand shift, almost like banging a gear in a 4-speed. Once you get used to it, there's no other way to ride a motorcycle.
So they on the Cannonball Run, they do about 300 miles a day.
Yes.
And what would you say this bike uses about 2 quarts of oil
About 2 quarts of oil. Yeah.
for the 300 miles?
For 300
Because these old bikes are kind of like our old tractors, the really old tractors. They don't recycle oil.
Yeah.
So you put the oil in and it just drips through and it goes through the engine, and then it'll come out bent out onto the chain. So you're always lubricating your chain, and then it just goes down the road.
Yeah, it either burns it off or dumps it out the vent.
Exhaust.
You only got one line that goes to the oil pump, doesn't return it. The oil pump's almost like a squirt can, just little
Okay.
drops. And you can adjust it. There's an adjustment on here, how much oil you put through. I like to run it so I see a little bit of smoke coming out of the pipe, and that way I know it's got oil. If it doesn't have smoke coming out of the pipe, that makes me nervous.
Right. So he's got some. Well, here's a Indian Scout trike. Sarah really likes this thing.
Yeah, we build those here. And,
She's talking about getting a trike, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I hear you.
We're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So okay, tell me about this bike.
This is a 1942 model 741 Indian Scout, U.S. military. Indian built a lot of these for the military. Went overseas. A lot of these wound up in Russia, New Zealand for some reason. There's quite a few of them in New Zealand. But
Asian.
yeah, great bikes. They're bulletproof. Run forever.
That's a neat bike.
Yeah.
And you said these bags were original.
This bike is a very correct original motorcycle. It's got a lot of hard to find pieces on it. Just a fantastic model,
Oh.
beyond a doubt.
All right, and this was a 1916. What model was this?
This is a
one?
1916 Power Plus, 1,000 cc's, 3-speed transmission, with a lot of accessories on it. This bike did not come with lights on it, so it's got the lighting package, both front and rear. This is like an acetylene tank. You put Prestolene in it. You would take it to your local hardware store, a welding supply outfit. They'd fill it for you, and it'd be good to go. So you light this with a match. You light the rear one with a match. good to, you know, you got your lights. Got a little ball valve on here. What I like is it's got a rubber hose that goes to the fender here, and then the tubing is internal to the filter, the fender, and then it comes back out, rubber hose, goes back to the tank. So that's one accessory. Speedometer is an accessory. The horn, toolbox, and you get this bike with a single speed transmission or a 3-speed. This has got the 3-speed. And they also made this model with rear suspension. So you'd have another leaf spring as on the front, on the rear, and that bike came with also a single speed or a 3-speed.
Fantastic bikes.
Yeah, that's a 1941 4-cylinder there. That bike was a Connecticut State Police bike. I pulled that out of the chicken coop about, I'd say 25 years ago out of Connecticut.
The badge on the front fender is really neat.
This thing was covered in pigeon crap, and we cleaned it. This is what it looked like, right here.
So
Somebody had repainted it.
You just cleaned it up.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So okay, and this the blue one here, it says LPD on it.
Yeah. That's Long Meadow, Mass Police Department. This was their last motorcycle that they had in their police force. They retired it in 1957. If you look at this bike, it's still got the license plate on it from 1957. They didn't even take the plate off when they took it off the road. They auctioned it out. We found it probably about 5 years ago. I'm a picker. It's a heck of a story to find this bike. We took it out of an old church. It was abandoned in there with a lot of other motorcycles. It's got the original tires on it, very low mileage. We took it, flushed out the tanks, flushed the engine, cleaned the carburetor, cleaned the points, put fresh oil, fresh gas in it, and this bike started right up.
That's incredible.
And it still charges. Siren works. It's a foot-operated siren. You push the lever right here. There's a swivel, and there's a little wheel that hits up against the rear wheel as long as the bike's moving. That's what powers the siren.
That's cool.
I have pictures of this bike pulling over cars on Route 5 in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, and you can see that license plate on it.
No kidding.
Here's a picture of the cop on the bike. That was taken in 1952. John Barkham was his name. They had two ways of getting a hold of him. This bike did not have a radio on it, so they either called the mobile gas station because he hung out there all the time, or they turned on a light in the center of town like Batman, and he knew to call the station.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's just cool. All right, quick history on this one. I've never seen an old 4-cylinder 2-seater like this. This is there's nowhere for your passenger to put his feet. There's no foot pegs, so
yeah, you would put a set of pegs on it. What you would wind up with is either another set of pegs here, or you would extend these floorboards. But this is a 1932 4-cylinder. The first year where the tank actually wrapped around the outside, around the frame rails. If you looked at that Scout over there, you'll see the tank is internal to the frame rails.
Okay.
This particular bike, I searched for. I kept on getting little leads about it. You know, there's a 4-cylinder in a barn in Connecticut. Well, you hear that all the time. Then you try to isolate it to an area. We found out it was in the Manchester, Connecticut area. That's all I knew about it. Finally, I sold a bike to this guy, and he was probably 65 years old. And he says, "Hey, my old high school teacher had a 4-cylinder up there in the attic of the loft of his barn." I said, "Was the guy still alive?" He says, "I think so." So he stopped by the house, knocked on the door. Guy answered the door in his 90s.
Wow.
And he says, "Hey, you still got that 4?" And he says, "Yeah." So they went up to the barn, and sure enough, it was there. I was able to go back and make a deal and buy it from the guy. And the only reason he sold it to me, because he says, "I got to get my wife a new car. She's still driving around in a 1978 Volvo." And so that's why he sold it to me. But it's got it's got this is an accessory. This is made by Messenger, rear seat package, and it's really a cool deal.
Yeah, it is. I've never seen one like that.
Yeah. And then you got the Indian outboard engine. That's 1930, 1 year only. They made 2 batches of it, 600 each.
1 year only.
Yeah, 1 year only.
Wow.
And this is the second batch one. The way you can tell is the different fuel tanks on them. But what's even rarer than the engine is the actual stand that it's sitting on. That's an Indian display stand. They only made a few of those. They made mostly for dealership displays or sales type operations.
And you have 2 of them.
Yeah, I have 2 of them now. But I had the stand. The guy that had the engine was bugging me because he wanted the stand to put the engine on. I eventually talked him out of the engine. So, took me a number of years to do it.
This is cool.
Yeah, but there's a lot of neat bikes in there. Like this Black Indian over here. This one here has been in a ton of magazines. It was called the Chief. It was first titled in 1987. Long story about it, but it's an original paint bike.
Wow.
It was involved in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, had a big flood in the 50s, and it flooded out the whole town. This Indian dealer got flooded. He took all the stuff. Indian was going out of business. This is one of the last bikes to leave the assembly line in 53. So he just kind of stashed all the stuff, probably got an insurance check, whatever, and went into selling English bikes, Triumphs, and so on and so forth. And then these guys out of Colorado found out about it, went out there in 87, bought out the whole inventory. This bike was part of it. And it was one of these bikes I saw in a magazine. I'm like, man, I'd love to own that bike. It's so nice. And then a number of years later, I had the opportunity to buy it. I went out to Colorado and got that bike.
That's really neat. The badge on it's amazing.
And it's
Still got the dealer badge right
yeah,
there.
it still has
Yeah.
dealer sticker on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
The badge on it.
Look at this little badge up front too. That's just neat.
Yeah,
There's
this
a lot
guy,
of neat details on there.
he was a rancher out in Colorado, and very interesting fella. But we flew into the airport in Denver. We couldn't find him. I got a pocket full of cash to pay him, and I'm like, "Where's this guy?" I knew where his address was. He gave me his address, so we rented a van. My daughter and I drove up over to Rockies. It was a little bit of a run to get there, like 3 or 4 hours from Denver, and we finally get there. The guy's not home. I'm like, I got my daughter. I'll get this bike. He pulls in the driveway down there, and he goes, "Hey," he says, I flew my plane down to pick you up, but you weren't there." And I said, "I didn't know that." So anyhow, we go in the garage. The bike's there. He's got this like big hangar type of thing, and there's another airplane in there. And after we were talking to the guy for a while, he says, "Yeah, that was my first plane." He says, "Every now and then I fix it up. I take it out, I fly it for a while, then I crash it, and I got to fix it again." I'm thinking I wouldn't have flown with you.
Yeah, you would have.
Yeah.
Was that where the international
Yeah,
Cessna
he
sticker
was a
came
Cessna
from?
guy. Yeah.
Okay. This is a beautiful bike.
Yeah.
I'll
this
tell you what,
really
to
is.
start this bike though, it takes 2 minutes a boy.
Does it really?
Oh my God. This bike here, it was Bill's bike, and he was like a mechanic, hung out at Floyd MD's shop. Floyd MD, if you get into the old Indian history, he's very well renowned for racing. I believe Floyd, I'm pretty sure he won the last Daytona, if I remember right, in 1948 on an Indian motorcycle. This bike, they tweaked this bike in his shop.
Oh,
And this thing runs like no other 53.
full of compression.
Yeah, a lot of compression in it. So if I'm walking around with a limp, chances are I forgot to tire. It'll hurt you.
So what's the car here?
This is a 1914 Smith Flyer, and this was actually built as an automobile to compete with the Model T.
Okay.
I thought it was a kid's toy when I first saw this thing. It was
Yeah.
hanging from the rafters of this barn way up in the air. And I'd taken some pictures of a car. We went to look at a Model A for my friend in New Hampshire. I'd taken pictures of the car, sent it to him, and he texts me right back. He goes, "The hell with the Model A, Dennis? He said, that thing up there is super rare." I said, "Really?" So I did some research, and I was sure as shit it is. But here it is. It's all in really good shape. This is a suspension of wood. It's almost like an old sled. And that's a Smith motor wheel on the back. So you crank it up by hand, got a compression release, you pop the compression release, it starts up, get it up to the RPM you want, you sit down in the car, and you put it down, boom, you're off to the races, you go to wherever you want to go.
Okay.
And then the brakes, here's the brake pedal, watch the fenders. The fenders push against the rear wheel. That's your brakes.
Oh my gosh.
Could you imagine 2 guys bouncing down the road in this thing?
No.
It was probably a blast, really.
Yeah, but Guinness Book of World Records got this listed as one of the cheapest cars ever built. There's one in the Smithsonian. There's not too many of these around.
No.
I
pretty
wouldn't
rare.
think so.
And that same motor wheel, they actually made that also. You can mount it to a bicycle. So there was a lot of applications for this.
It's a neat idea.
I've seen that contraption on Mike Rowe's show.
Yeah,
American
exactly.
Pickers. I've seen he's
Yeah.
found some of those.
Right. This was made by A.O. Smith Company originally, and then they sold it to Briggs and Stratton, like 1919 or something like that. And this was kind of the start of Briggs and Stratton, because Briggs and Stratton took a look at that engine and said, you know, we can start mounting this kind of engine on lawnmowers and stuff like that. So they sold this to the design again to another company who wound up making an electric operation. They put a Dodge starter on it with a couple of batteries in the back.
Well, it's really neat. I sure appreciate you chatting with us.
Yeah.
It's been great.
It's a neat store.
That little red Indian over against the wall there, that was one of my grandpa's bikes. He worked for Indian Motorcycle, and it was 1949. At that point, he was in his 50s, and he wanted something easy to start, and this bike had a hand clutch on it, foot shift like a modern motorcycle. And a lot of people from the Indian collector world really deride these. They don't like them, the vertical models. They say this will put it out of business. But they're great running bikes. This bike runs fantastic. Those skis, that's an Indian accessory package to put on this bike. That's my grandfather on it with the ski package on it. It was taken in like 1952. He rode year round. He didn't care. So
that's when men were men.
yeah. And my cousins lived in his house back then. And they get to his house, he had to go down this hill, down the road, and then he had to make the sharp turn to go up his driveway. So they'd hear the bike coming. So they all get in the windows and they'd place bets whether or not, we called him Pepe because we're French Canadian, whether or not Pepe would wreck coming in. But he never wrecked.
I've never heard of that ski thing to put it. That's neat.
Yeah, they're spring loaded, so they'd be on the bike. So it's basically like you put your foot down for stability sometimes on a bike. You would do the same thing, but with skis. My goal this year is I want to get those mounted back on here, and one of the snowstorms, we're going to ride around.
Oh, that would be neat.
You can find videos on YouTube. There's a guy out in New York who's got a set on one of his bike, and he's got some good videos of him riding it around. These are all Indian engines. This is a brand new.
Ooh, brand new in the crate.
Yeah, brand new. This is really rare too, because it's actually a Sport Scout engine. There's a lot of military engines, but not Sport Scout. So the difference being, if you look at the intake manifold, that's a V pattern.
Okay.
The military one would be a perfect T. So if you look at like that one over there, that's what that one is. But the crate still says Indian on it. It's still got all the good shit on it.
41 inline 4.
Yeah. No, it's not. That's Scout.
Oh, okay.
That's
for the skis.
This
okay.
is this one right here.
$100 back in the day.
That's my grandpa in 1920 on a Henderson J.
Oh.
He's got the goggles around his neck. He's ready to go for a ride.
That's so cool. People dressed up back in the day.
It's a great family history to have.
That's
And
fantastic.
he's look at the headlight too. It's the same as on that Power Plus.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
The Prestolite tank. There's the horn. It's pretty much set up the same way.
That's really neat.
A lot of history here.
Yeah. Yeah, it
It's
sure
great you
is.
still have this, which is wonderful.
Yeah, this bike here, when I was a kid, it was in the barn, and I had bike fever. All my friends were getting bikes, and come on, Dad, let me take the Indian and get it running, blah, blah, blah. No. And then finally, one day, it was 1972, they decided to have the Antique Indian Home Day Rally in Springfield. So he says to me, he says, you get that Indian out of the barn, and you get it running cleaned up, I'll let you bring it down there and show it. And I was in freaking heaven.
Yeah.
I dragged that thing out. I got this thing running, and we brought it down there and showed it. So after that, he used to let me run around the farm a little bit. And we had this long barn. From the farmhouse, looking down the barn, he couldn't see me when I was on the other side of the barn. So I would take this thing and wind it up, try to get it high gear every time. And one time I did get it high gear, I'm like, yeah, life is good. But at the end of the barn, you had to take a sharp left. There was a stone wall directly in front of you. Well, I bounced off the wall. That's this scrape right here. And to this day, I remember I think my father's gonna kill me. He never noticed it.
No.
I mean, all these scrapes, it's like my grandpa was a big guy, and he had this huge seat on it, so it bounced off of here and bounced off the back.
Okay.
In fact, it's like one of those seats
One of
hanging up in
those
the
big
wall right
ones?
there.
Yeah.
It's called the shunny seat.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, guys. There's
All right,
some.
bored to the death.
No, yeah.
Not at all.
There you are, Springfield. That's the old factory, I'm guessing,
That's
in the
exactly
picture.
right. That's what we want.
So there you go. Now, I'm not going to show you the new bikes. You guys all know what they look like.
Yeah.
You've seen enough of them.
Yeah.
I kind of feel bad walking into a place like this with the Indian history and the Indian bikes. with the Harley shirt on, but
Yeah, shame on you.
hey, you guys know how much we like our Roadmaster. That's for sure. All right, we'll
Let
see
me
you
show one
guys.
other thing here, and I'll let you go.
Oh yeah.
Here's a picture of a bunch of workers in an Indian factory taken in 1921. That's my grandpa right there.
Oh, no kidding.
And if you look, he's wearing the same hat he had on the bike.
That's really neat. Your grandpa's
Yeah,
in there.
yeah.
Oh wow.
That is really cool.
These are a great series of books. You can buy these online. A local guy here,
Motorcycles.
Butchie Bear, put these together. Butchie and Tom. Butchie, he's in a nursing home now. He's like 94, 95.
Oh, okay.
But there's another Scout trike that I built. It's a red one. It's over at my warehouse. When he turned 92, I built the trike for him.
Okay.
And
I think I saw
there's a picture here somewhere. We delivered it to him. And that day was crazy because AA wrote it there. I think it's right over here.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I saw that picture earlier.
That's really neat that.
Yeah, right there, Sarah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Butchie. And his father was a dealer in a factory in the 30s. And he raced and rode motorcycle all his life. When he turned 92, he couldn't ride a two-wheeler anymore.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I built him that bike. And then he rode it for 2 more years until finally the family took it away. So I wound up with it. But he's a trip. He was a trip. But his father's in this picture, by the way. Let me show you.
His father's in there?
Let me find a picture here. His father's in there. And my dad. Let's see. Got my glasses on. Right there. That's Fritzy Bear right there.
Huh.
That's my dad. That's Fritz. Now Fritzy is really interesting because when he quit being an Indian dealer in a factory, he goes up to New Hampshire and he bought the Belknap Recreation Area.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Laconia, big bike
Yeah.
rink
Yeah.
up there? That was the genesis of that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he started all that, and that became you know,
Really?
what we know as Laconia nowadays. And then his brother, they developed New Hampshire International Speedway, where we have
Okay.
races up there now.
Yeah.
The Bear family owned that for years,
Well,
and he just sold it for almost $500 million.
Wow.
well.
Just a cool history to have.
Yeah, but Butchie used to come in here all the time. That's the greatest thing. All these old timers used to come in here all the time. Like you see that there's a picture right to the right of that TV where those 2 Indian things are, and a
Oh,
guy
sure.
in the machine shop. That's Whitey Westenberg, and Whitey was a big Indian racer. That guy was just a freaking nut. Loved to race. He got killed in an airplane crash in the 70s. But see those old coveralls over there
Yep.
and that mannequin?
Yep.
Those used to be, I own another company, it's a construction company, and we specialize in building gas stations, I do oil terminals,
Okay.
stuff like that. There's an oil terminal down in Springfield, they sell number 2 heating oil, they get the loading racks and trucks pull and they load the trucks there. And there's a guy in the office, Ronnie Lampson, and I used to deal with him all the time. So I go into his office and those coveralls used to be hanging in his office, because he was a suit and tie guy. So if he had to go out into the loading racks and run the dirt and the grease
Yeah.
and shit, he threw those on. So I said, Ronnie, I want those coveralls. And he says, over my dead body. So for 20 years, this was a running joke between us. 'Cause
Right.
he used to call me regularly because I used to do all the service work for them there. He repaired all their shit. And he'd call me. I go, Ronnie, you dead yet? I want my coveralls.
I want my coveralls.
Come on, when you gonna die? I want my
Yeah.
coveralls. So we had a lot of fun with that over
Yeah,
20 years.
I bet.
One day I come home, they're on my freaking porch
Oh
in
no.
a bag.
Oh.
I said, fuck.
Right.
What happened? I called up another guy I worked on. He said, yeah, Ronnie, pancreatic cancer, like 3 weeks took him out. But he
Wow.
was on his deathbed. He told this guy at the company, he says, you go get those coveralls out of my office. You bring him to Dennis. So even though Ronnie's long dead, it's what's cool about a lot of this shit, people live on. You can
Yeah.
tell their
Yeah.
stories.
Absolutely.
You
Exactly.
know, and I mean,
Exactly.
And it's a great
It's
history to
important.
tell.
there's a chief right here. These pictures. This bike right here. That guy there in the Navy. He bought that bike.
All right, so we talked with Dennis and AA from that Springfield Indian dealership. Those guys are awesome.
Great people.
Great people. You ever get in the neighborhood, if you're ever in a market for an Indian motorcycle, or if you just want to know some Indian motorcycle history, or if you just want to sit around and bullshit with some decent people, there you go. I don't know why the camera shut off partway talking with Dennis. So, sorry. Just deal with it, I guess. I don't know why it shut off, but we had a great visit. We stayed there for a couple hours. Bought a dealer t-shirt from him.
Heard a lot of really amazing stories. It was a great stop.
Lot of history in these old bikes. And it's really neat that Dennis knows the history of these old bikes. I think part of the cool thing about having some of these old motorcycles is the actual hunt of finding them, and part of it is knowing and learning the knowledge of it. He said some of these bikes in here he hunted to find them for a number of years. That's part of the fun of it.
And getting the stories of the bike, that particular bike itself, where it came from, who had it.
It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. It was a very neat place.
So Sarah and I have felt on our travels that when you're on an Indian motorcycle, every time that we stop, whether it's for gas, whether it's a hotel, whether it's wherever, everybody comes up and talks to you because it's an Indian motorcycle. There's something really neat about that. I have never once on the Harleys had people come up and just talk to you for no reason. That the Indian motorcycle world and culture is just a little bit different. And we've been real hit and miss with dealerships. We've been real hit and miss. Some of the dealerships we've been in has not been the best. But some of these Indian dealers that we've been experiencing out here in the East Coast, they have been pretty decent.
They care about the history of Indian. They're very friendly. They'll tell you anything you want to know. They actually it feels like genuinely want to be talking to you, which is great.
There's no reason for these guys to sit here for a couple, 2.5 hours, whatever, just to sit and talk with us. They know we're not going to buy anything. We were just there just to say that we've been there. But they still took their time out of their day. He could have been doing a lot of other stuff. And it's really nice knowing that there's people like that out here in the world that want to share the history and want to share their experience. All right, that's enough of that. We are going to get trucking down the road. Sarah found another antique store down the road that she wants to go look at. Did you hear the eye roll? I don't know if you could hear that or not, but I did.
What you're missing here is me flicking him in the ear as soon as the camera shuts off.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that video. Hope you enjoyed that the talk that we had with those guys. Amazing people. Peace. Later.